Okay, welcome everybody to another Forum Friday. I'm here with Dr. Lin, and we're going to fill you in and get caught up on some of the things that are happening in our conversation forums on Facebook. Hi, Dr. Lin. How you doing?
Hi, Mark. I'm doing well.
Excellent. Been
Love to
busy
see
with lots of
all
seminars.
those questions on the forum. It's wonderful.
It's been great. There's been lots of conversations going on, and so I had little trouble sitting down and just to pick out a few that we can talk about, because otherwise we'll fill the video for over an hour, right?
Just so much, just so
So
many
it's
problems in the bakery world.
but these are interesting. They're not some of the run of the mill things. I mean, because we've had a lot of questions about shelf life in the past, and now we've got some really different ones. And
Ooh, some
one
processing
that
questions, I
yeah,
see.
so
Yeah.
one that popped up is kind of neat.
Yeah.
Is
So
I'm
tell
not
me, what the different the conversation has moved a little bit. Mainly, do you think it's because you and I talk a lot about shelf life issues? Now that people have figured that out, we're moving on to something like replacing sugar.
maybe because there's been a number of members as well, who have added to that conversation and have echoed a lot of the things that we have said, and added their own experience and stuff to validate what is happening or how they resolved issues. And I think that not that people are afraid. I mean, if you still have shelf life questions, please do post them. But I think what has happened is now the learning has transferred, is people have now picked up and learned from this, and they're able to now search this forum and look for things on shelf life or mold or whatever. And they can educate themselves just through the Facebook forum as well. So
Yeah.
that's where we wanted to go with this. That's the whole fun of
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
absolutely. We should encourage the use of hashtags on our discussions so that
Yes.
we
Yeah.
could, those sub threads can be found.
Yes, I have to remember to. I'm going to go back and tag some of the
Yeah, me
conversations,
too.
because that will really help. Because then when you just search a
Exactly.
hashtag, and boom, everything
Right.
pops up a lot easier, right?
Yeah,
Um,
so tell me about one of the questions or discussion on replacing sugar with high intensity sweeteners.
yes. So I'm not sure what region they might be in, but what comes out of the conversation is that the cost of sugar has gone very high wherever they are. And we've seen that in the US to some extent as well. Although in the US, sugar is subsidized through the farm bill, so that's a whole other conversation. But it the idea of replacing sugar with the sucrose, that is, with high intensity sweeteners for cost, is not necessarily a good way to go about this, because what they will discover is that these high intensity sweeteners are extremely expensive. Um, because we need to keep in mind that something like sucralose, on average, depending on the medium that it's in, is 600 times sweeter than sugar. So you also got to be super precise, not just because of cost, but if you miss by 1/10 of a gram, you're adding between 60 to 100 grams more sugar in sweetness. And then the high intensity sweetener only deals with the sweetness. So now you have to look at, well, browning. So to improve the browning, you're going to have to add some sort of protein, maybe like more milk powder or something like that. So you're adding cost there again, and different processing and functionality. And if you want to increase the softness of the crumb because you take the sugar out, then there's nothing there as a humectant to absorb that water. So now you're going to have to increase the fat and maybe add some gums or other hydrocolloids. And so it becomes then much more of a formula balancing act. It's not as straightforward as simply take the sugar out and put sweetener in. Because even for consumers who are using some of the natural sweeteners from the store that have stevia in it. Most of those are not pure. Well, they're definitely not pure stevia. They're blended usually at least with erythritol, and a lot of them are blended about 50% with sugar. So the package looks the same, and people just don't look closely as what they're buying and don't realize they're still buying sugar, just that they're using less because of the high intensity sweetener that is in there. And stevia is one of those that it has a very strong aftertaste, so that to replace sugar 100% with stevia really doesn't taste nice at all. And it's usually done together in combination with monk fruit and other sweeteners like allulose and things like that, because you just can't get around that stevia extract flavor. It lingers too. That's the thing, right? So that's an interesting conversation that is going on there, and helping them to get to some resolution to where they need to be, and look at ways to make this work. Because the first part of the conversation, the fear was, if they remove the sugar, then there's nothing there to ferment. Well, if you have enough enzyme activity, there's still enough to ferment. So you could add some barley flour to get some more to break the starch down, and stuff like that. So that is kind of that one that is taking place, right? There's another one sticking with bread. There's a fellow who's making a large Pullman toast loaf. So a Pullman is the bread that's enclosed in a pan, so that the bread is completely square, right? And he's getting really good feedback from myself and others, including Jim and Yuri, because he shared his complete formula, and he shared his process, all of the details. So he's getting lots of pointers on all of the different things that he could look at adjusting to help improve this situation, from increasing fat, lowering milk powder, and things like that, and bake time. He's baking 50 minutes.
Oh my gosh, that's too much.
It is a large loaf. It's a 1,400-gram loaf, but still 50 minutes is just way too long, right?
Yeah, but it's baked inside a tin can, right?
Yes, yeah.
So that's why the bake out is not. Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah, it still may be a good 5 minutes too long, I'm thinking. But
well, nothing that a thermal profiler can't change.
Exactly. This would be a perfect circumstance for a thermal profiler, right?
Yes,
to really help, because that's where the information is getting that data that helps guide you and put that together. So that is a fabulous conversation. That is one that really shows the power of the networking and this board, and people from all over the world, from Spain and Philippines and everywhere.
So happy to see that.
It's really great to see. It's really super, right?
Yeah.
And so awesome. So that one's really awesome.
Yeah.
And so there's one.
You have a question on Rotary Mold Cookie.
Yes, that one is still sort of developing a little bit.
What's the problem?
Well, he says he's come up with a cookie that is like a famous Rotary Mold style cookie. Okay. And he finds his cookie is too hard. He wants the cookie to be a bit softer. So of course, with something like a Rotary Mold Cookie, you often don't want the shape to change too much. In other words, you don't want too much flow in the oven.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You want the imprint on there.
Exactly. And so what sometimes happens as people formulate these is that they cut back so far on the sugar and increase the flour too much that it gets too hard.
Yeah.
The other thing could be that he might need to increase the fat a little bit without getting flow. He has added some glucose syrup, but that could just end up making the cookie very too soft, too pliable, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and the other thing would be to lean out the flour even further with some
Mm-hmm.
starch to make it tender.
Soft, soft,
Yeah.
soft
Yep.
opportunity for like the worst kind of flour you can buy on the market.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's where in here in North America and US and Canada, we have the easy advantage at times to use a chlorinated flour and something like this. And because the chlorination doesn't just make it white, it actually denatures the proteins as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't have that strength, that binding as much taking place, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's sharing pieces of information, but there again, if they share more of the formula up front, the ratios, then it's easier for us to help them, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the key issues with texture cookies is it's always easier to go from hard to soft rather from soft to hard. So this is
Yeah,
an easy issue. I hope you guys will be able to
yep,
figure it out.
yeah. I hope they can figure it out too. It shouldn't be too difficult, right? And like I said, my 2 cents worth, I said is that if he's got a weak flour, then the rest is ratios. So a basic short crust cookie is 1, 2, 3, 1 part sugar, 2 parts fat, 3 parts flour, and then you can flip it up and down whichever way you go for different textures from there, right? And so I think he's got probably way too much flour and not enough of the other things. And um, it's actually the same person was asking about uh, sodium bicarbonate to SAPP ratios. SAPP
Okay.
is the acronym for sodium acid pyrophosphate,
Mm-hmm.
which is of course a very popular leavening acid that has several different rate of reaction speeds. And Jim Little was able to pipe in and share that typically it would be about 1 to 0.7 or 100 to 70. So 70% SAP and 100% sodium bicarbonate, excuse me. And but if it's in a thin cookie, then usually all you need is some soda. You don't even necessarily need leavening acid if you're just trying to get a little bit of tenderness lift or a tiny bit of spread, because the pH in the flour and the other ingredients is low enough to react with the soda and give you
Mm-hmm.
that reaction.
That's true.
So that's kind of the one that's going on there. So it's a little more technical details going on. So quite interesting.
Yeah, and if in doubt, always take out the pH meter and just measure the final pH of the cookie dough or after it bakes. I mean,
Yep.
you can really, if you can't taste it, you can measure it.
Yep.
That's how
And if you don't want to invest in the pH meter equipment, the other tool that I like using for quick instant results, because the one thing with the pH with cookies, you have to still dissolve it into some DI water and stuff like that.
Mhm.
The one that I love using for real quick results is the indicator solution.
Mhm.
It's a pH indicator solution,
Yep,
and
that will
you
work
can
too.
you can order it. It's concentrated, and then it's an orange, looks like an orange dye. It always reminds me of iodine a little bit. And you basically you dilute it with distilled or deionized water, and you put a few drops of that on the cookie crumb or cake or whatever you're working on, and you can see by the color change whether your leavening system is balanced or not, and it shows right away. So you get, if you get it orange, you're spot on. You're right there, right? Starts to go
Mhm.
pink, you got way too much soda. If it
Yeah,
goes yellow, then you're too acidic and you don't have enough soda, right? So it
that's
tells you
true.
everything. Yeah.
That's true. So, that's a great wrap up of what we have been covering in the forum. If you don't remember what we discussed today, just remember the three key things that Mark said about cookies. What is that, Mark?
Oh, the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, the one, two, three. We got to leave with the one, two, three.
1, 2, 3. 1 part sugar,
One
two
part
part
sugar,
2 parts fat,
2 parts fat,
and 3 parts flour.
Ta-da!
That'll always make a great
Just
short
remember
crust.
that.
Yeah, yeah. I've been using that formula for 47 years. It always
It
works.
works. It works. People don't change it. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. And we will see you again next month on Forum Fridays.
Yep. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.